me see, is my audio good? Yep. Hello. All right, testing.
All right, well, hello and welcome, folks. Hopefully, you can hear me okay. And Rakesh, say a quick hello so we can do an audio test.
Hi, good. Hello, everyone.
Yeah, yeah. I know the start is always like, yeah, is this thing on? Let's see. All right, folks. I know there's a little bit of a lag, but yeah, let us know if you can hear us. We've been chatting with some of you already. Papa Chaudhry is here. Manish is here. Matthias is here. I think was it Alice who had joined us earlier? Yes, it was Alice, and Zunair is here. So yeah, say hellos. Let us know where you're joining us from. Hopefully you can hear this. Yeah, all right, there we go. Great. So Donald is here. He's saying that the audio sounds great. So folks, yeah, I'm still in India. I plan to spend about a month here, um, and just there was the time was such that I needed to be closer to my parents. So I'm glad for that, but I'm also glad that I'm somewhat over my jet lag. If you joined us last Friday, I was almost having to duct tape my eyes open. So today we got a special topic, and of course we're kind of switching gears at Learn Power BI. We had an amazing launch and kickoff for our Power BI consultant program, and now we're switching gears to something that is close to my heart, which is the Power BI pioneer. That is the business leader who's trying to evangelize or push Power BI within the organization, right? So, but now that is frankly a persona that I haven't quite served. I haven't really focused on serving them, but I want to change that this year. So we're kicking that off with today's session. And if you go to our site, learnpowerbi.com, you're going to notice that we have big things coming in March. In March, we're planning a Power BI conference all around that business leader, the Power BI Pioneer persona. And we're also going to officially launch our Power BI Pioneer program. So that's what's coming next. So today, we are here to talk about the challenges that they face, and I got some topics lined up. But before that, let me introduce our special guest, Rakesh. And Rakesh runs BI dashboards out of South Africa. And there's a link in the description to Rakesh's LinkedIn profile. I believe you can connect with him there. And of course, from his LinkedIn website, you can find his website and check that out as well. Um, and Rakesh, by the way, is also one of our newest members in the Power BI consultant program. So, folks, this is where I feel like 2021 is going to be an epic year, because think about the synergy. We have one group, which is folks like Rakesh, kind of Power BI consultants who are focused and dedicated on helping other companies succeed, right? And then we're getting together as a group of Power BI pioneers who are these leaders or aspiring leaders within their company who are trying to, kind of go big with Power BI and make a big impact. So, yep, this group, these two, we really expect these two groups to work closely together. Um, awesome. So, Rakesh, before we actually dive into the topic, maybe tell us a bit about yourself. Tell us a bit about your company.
Sure, Avi. So BI Dashboards was launched last year in the pandemic.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm still currently employed though, and I'm running the company on the sideline. So I'm working as a senior data analyst for a telecoms contact center, inbound and outbound contact center that specializes in sales. The company, I launched it. It's still pretty small. It's a small startup. And I've had one client more in the irrigation space for they normally sell irrigation parts and carry on irrigation, perform irrigation duties.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's still in its very early days.
Yeah, but otherwise, yeah. So your focus is around sales and mostly in the telecom sector. Is that right?
That is correct. Yes,
Yeah, awesome. So hey, all big stories start small, and yeah, and actually, I've always had a problem with how like they categorize small, medium, large businesses, and of course, if somebody would what's happening to me? Who would look at my business, they would label me a small business, right? But man, I never liked that term because it just, for one, it's hierarchical, right? I mean, small is yeah, by definition is not as great as medium, which is not as great as large, right? So it's just, and it just never made sense. So I'm still looking for that term. Of course, there's a solopreneur. I love that. I do like that term. Um, and somebody said small but mighty, and I like that too. So yeah, man. I mean, it's great. I always say you're on the launch pad, ready to take off. What a great place to be. So Rakesh, thanks for being here. So again, folks, we're talking about the business leader, the Power BI pioneer, who are, right. I mean, leader or aspiring leaders, and they're trying to. They see something. They see the pain in the current organization. Frankly, it frustrates them a little bit, and they see the hope too. They have seen, right, the bright side. They've seen what Power BI can do, and they want to just, if they could wave a magic wand and just have everybody using Power BI, that's what they would do. But of course, they don't have that magic wand. They have to take the hard route, and there's some obstacles and challenges in front of them. So I also wanted to thank Luis Torrealba. I'm not sure if I'm saying his last name right, but he really helped me out with our early conversation about this with him. That was a private conversation, but some good ideas. So, Rakesh, I'm going to kick us off, and this is the first thing that Luis had said, and he said that, yeah, I wanna evangelize Power BI within my organization, but there's this inertia of rest, right? The resistance to change, right? The status quo he's fighting, right? I mean, people just want to keep doing the same thing, the same old, same old. Um, have you encountered that in the organizations that you work with, and maybe the client you work with?
Thanks, Avi. Yes, interesting you raised that topic. I actually had that experience, a direct experience like that with my previous line manager. When I used to do all the company reporting on Excel, and obviously Excel, after a while, you start to have its limitations. I then switched on to Power BI, and I told him, listen, this is what we need to be moving towards, because we can automate the reporting instead of manually compiling it and only having it once or twice a week. We can have this on the fly. And his exact words to me was, that can be your sideline hobby. And let's fast track 18 months into the future, current day. We have a whole BI department,
Wow.
which I've predominantly set up, and we have automated reporting, and the business is seeing the benefits of having this information on hand, the value that it adds, and the ability for them to take action at a much more speedier pace than previously.
Yeah.
So yes, companies in South Africa are starting now to adopt and to move in that space, but it's very slow uptake. It's
Mm-hmm.
it's a very slow uptake from what I see. People are still within interdepartments. They still rely on that Excel. They want the raw files or the Excel files. They want to get their hands dirty and feel their data themselves. It just gives them a sense of I don't know, maybe security,
Yeah.
and instead of just seeing a dashboard with a slice and dice facility. um, I think, yeah, that's the kind of phase that I find myself in, where people, so we have a few adopters in the business, but we've still got a few people who are reluctant to move into that space
Yeah.
of switch from Excel to Power BI.
Wow, so that's a great story. I mean, you've clearly accomplished a lot in the 18 months. That's amazing. But yeah, but take me back to kind of the early days. And what were the initial conversations like? Like, I mean, if you would go to people, what would their reaction be? Especially, maybe talk about, if you remember, some groups who were not, like, I'm sure, it's possible you found some people who were like, oh yeah, this looks great, let's do it, great idea, right? But tell me about the groups who were, I don't know, lukewarm or maybe even hostile. So a little on the negative side. What were their conversations like what kind of things they would say?
It was more around, is the information correct? Because we can't validate the data.
Yeah.
They didn't have the background. If you shared it on the service, on Power BI service, they didn't have information on the background, so they
Yeah.
were reluctant because they thought, oh, you're just giving me a number
Yeah.
and we've got to believe that number.
Yeah.
But after we spend time with them, taking them to the process of how we to build the dashboard and getting them to sign off on different parts of during the requirements gathering, and then they
Yeah.
start to feel that they're part of the process. And that was a key step
Mm-hmm.
or learning step for me, is to engage the stakeholders or get them involved in the entire building of the dashboard, so that at every step they sign off, they understand exactly what
Mm-hmm.
number is showing or what
Love
stat
it.
or visual is being put
Love
up.
it.
They have to be involved in that
Well, man,
from the
love it.
onset.
And I kind of got a sense of the one approach that I always talk about, which is agile BI, right? I mean, just kind of go in quick iterations. Don't just collect requirements and then lock yourself in a dark room for 6 months, then come out with this perfect product. Look, I got everything you asked for, and then nobody is happy. So it sounded like it was pretty iterative, right? I mean, you guys worked in kind of these cycles. You would build something, bounce it off of the business users, iterate again.
Exactly. I think you've mentioned this before. It's like minimal viable product. So
Yeah.
it's like we would take a small segment of the data and we build that, and then we keep adding to those things, and eventually you have this huge, humongous dashboard with a quite a complex model in it. But it's
Yeah.
built in stages. It's not something that you just go
Yeah.
in guns blazing.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
buy in.
Love it. Love it. Oh gosh, I felt I had a question there. Um, Man, you covered so much ground there. Um, so I think the key is that it helps if you have a teenage son, because I had to learn the same lesson that Rakesh was talking about. You you need to kind of make it seem like it's their idea, and then it's all good.
Exactly.
Uh, Let me see. I have a feeling I had something here. So, I'm going to share one quote which I love, and this is attributed to Reed Havens, another Power BI pro, Microsoft MVP. He's pretty amazing, runs his own channel. Most of you might know him from YouTube, Havens Consulting. Now, Reed would say something. He said, "Avi, people don't fear change; they fear loss." And you have to figure out what are they afraid of losing. And it could be a few different things. Rakesh pointed to one of them here, which was kind of this loss of control, right? I mean, if you have an Excel sheet, it's ugly. It takes you a week to kind of refresh it, but you feel like you haven't control. And again, it's perception that is reality, because the truth is that I know when I was running Excel sheets, was I really in control? I mean, looking back, I was running 1001 different steps manually, and they were error prone. I could fat finger something, break something, and wouldn't even know that I had the wrong results. And of course, that happened in real scenarios a lot of times. I presented data and only later, I don't know, embarrass myself in front of a room, and right. So that stuff like that happens, but still, there is that risk there. But there is an illusion of control, which they feel like they're losing that. So you got to kind of manage that. So yeah, that's what I'd picked up on Rakesh's conversations. Rakesh, this is good stuff, man. Thanks so much for tag teaming with me here. So folks, let's move on. And the next challenge is this one man army syndrome, and you can do a lot with Power BI, and one person can make a huge impact, but at some point it becomes too much, right? I mean, one person can't do everything. So as things kind of spread, did you find yourself in that situation, Rakesh, where you kind of like, yeah, I mean, now Power BI, but initially the struggle is that, oh, I need to convince others of Power BI, I need to sell them, but then one person, they see what you built for one person, and the next person hears it and they want it, and then you kind of stretched too thin. Did you end up in a situation like that?
Interestingly enough, Avi, I find myself in that space now.
Wow.
We a two-man team servicing multiple departments within the organization,
Yeah.
and it's got to a point where a lot of our data that's coming in is from external clients,
Mm-hmm.
and they're coming in raw files like Excel. Some of them are putting it into FTP. So there's the whole ETL process that we depend on for some of the developers to get the data ready, and 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 because the BI needs that data, we find ourselves sometimes waiting for the data, or it's coming through in
Yeah.
different formats, things like that. So it kind of bottlenecks at the BI team. And I think what we're actually meeting next week is to just try and streamline some of that and align the ETL processes together with the BI, so that we have a more fluent flow of data coming through that we can dashboard.
Yeah. That's great. Those are some specific challenges, but earlier I think the ratio as to so I of course my background is I was always on the business side of things. I was very briefly in IT. I'm glad for that. But I saw this odd phenomena, or experienced it, I guess, that in a team of about 20 people, sometimes a little less, there was always one data person. There had to be one data person, and everybody knew who that person was, and he was their go-to person for reporting. Like if somebody came and said, "Oh, I need this report," like, "Yep, go to that person." And of course, I ended up being that person in my team. And yeah, I wouldn't be hired to do reporting. I would be hired for whatever role, but I would also end up being their data guy. Um, so yeah, one person could kind of service 20, but with Power BI, it's it's out of whack. So I once I started using Power BI, the audience that I was serving quickly grew to a few hundred, but then it crossed like 1,000, like crossed 2,000, and yeah. So there new challenges come with that, and certainly. Rakesh, there is this idea that I've been seeing quite a bit. So IT certainly has their role, IT or the centralized BI team, but uh, these Power BI pioneers who are like spreading this Power BI within the organization, I've often seen that the best place for them is to be straddling the IT and business worlds. Is that how you see it? Is that where like your two-person team, is that where you find yourself operating, where you're almost like a link between the two sides, the business and kind of the tech or the IT side?
Yes, Avi, I think a few months back we were part of IT, and we had some restructuring. So they moved us exactly in between business and IT.
Yeah.
So we're sitting in between. You're servicing the business, but you dependent on IT for the data and the ETL processes. So exactly what you're saying. And we
Yeah.
find ourselves more to lean towards the business side, because we want the adopters of those dashboards, they
Mm-hmm.
predominantly from the business, to understand their business units, and to fully immerse ourselves in understanding exactly what they're trying to achieve. So that's why we lean more towards the business, but
Yeah.
mostly dependent. So
Oh,
we're in between.
yeah. Also act as a bridge, right, or a translator. I've heard that word being used to. Yeah. I mean, I always say that business intelligence. It's time we put business intelligence. We oh God, I'm not saying it right. It's time we put business back in business intelligence, right? I mean, business intelligence was kind of yanked away from the business user, business teams, became this thing which was locked away in an ivory tower. And yeah, that's just silly. I mean, business users are the ones who are in the front line. They're the ones who need the data. So cool. So clearly, one man army. I do think that Power BI. Frankly, the most of the stories that I've heard, they do start with just this one person, which is awesome. So that's saying that one person can make a huge impact. But of course, at some point, you're gonna have to start thinking about a team, And again, it doesn't have to be a big team. I think just going from 1 to 2 people can make a huge difference. And of course, if it can have like a small team of 3 or 4 people, that can have a huge impact. So let's go on to the next one. So Rakesh, what about you, besides your team? What about educating the business users more on these amazing tools? Because earlier, the stuff that the BI team did was out of reach for business users. They couldn't. I mean, I was a business user, and I know my BI team would write stuff in MDX, and I don't know MDX or most of the technologies they use. It was right out of reach for me. But now Power BI is so within reach for business users. But how does it play out? How do you see it? How did you experience it? I mean, do you guys actively try to, I don't know, educate business users, encourage them? How has that part played out?
So Avi, currently we're not actually educating the business, and it's purely due to resourcing. One of the areas I've pointed out to the business is that we're building these dashboards, but there's no documentation. We don't have a
Yeah.
BI analyst to document these dashboards, and I find myself, I've built a dashboard like in 2019, a very complex dashboard. A new employee comes in,
Yeah.
and can you explain the dashboard to us? And you're like trying to jog your memory, and it's like, what did I build there? And because there's no documentation, generally get the stakeholder involved who the dashboard was built, and because they're using the dashboard on a daily basis, they understand that. But I think moving forward, having documentation in place, and meeting with the stakeholders, training them to say, okay, this is what we've built, this is the logic, this is what this number means. Because after a few weeks or whatever it is, like, hey, can you remind us again, what is that number, or what's this number? And you got to go unpack the DAX
Yeah.
and say, okay, this is what you asked for, and this is what we gave you.
Yeah.
So I think education is key. Unfortunately, we're not there yet, but it's
Yeah.
something we definitely need to look into to educate business users.
Yeah.
And we're running a lot with, I think we've got very few Power BI licenses where we're sharing on the service.
Mhm.
We publishing on SharePoint. And it's purely around costing of the Power BI license. So with SharePoint, you embed into SharePoint, and you share the dashboards. So the users have minimal filtering kind of capabilities.
Hmm.
It's very kind of like read only. Aside from the slice and dice that you give them, they're not able to manipulate any of the other stuff. And it's all in good reason, because they haven't been educated. They might go and change the data set to something like that, and they might not understand how to get it back.
Yeah.
So education is definitely something that we need to be looking into.
Yeah. Give me a sense of how large is the company or the audience base for BI, or how large would it potentially be?
So we have different facets within the business. If I think just on the top of my
I
head,
mean,
we
I
probably
just want to
have
get a sense of scale. Like, are we talking about 50, 500, more,
uh,
something
in
in
terms of
between?
employees, we're probably in the region of just about 1,000 employees.
All right.
But in terms of using Power BI, we've also say probably about maybe 150, 200, because we've built dashboards that our customer care departments use,
Yeah.
dashboards that the executives use. So it's probably about 150, 200 users.
Yeah. I'm wondering, have you already sensed something like, like sometimes, so I would go teach Power BI in a class of like 20 business users, and again, that 1:20 ratio, there would be this one person who would be really into it, would ask a lot of questions, pull me over at the lunch hour and all that stuff, and something like that. So have you run into any enthusiastic business users who really kind of fixated on this, like, man, this is awesome, and even if they don't have the capability now, but they seemed very intrigued? Do you run into those super fans, I guess?
Yes, there is one. He is actually he's a new executive, but
Wow.
when he came in, he runs our collections department, and he had a very good idea of exactly what he wanted, and he actually
Hey, Rakesh, you
put some
keep
dummy
talking.
data.
I realize I need
Put,
to get
sure.
my power cord, but you keep talking because they're listening.
Okay,
All right,
no
I'll be right
problem.
back.
And yeah, I was saying this executive, he came in and he knew exactly what he wanted on Power BI. He put together some dummy data, he put the visuals in place, and we obviously used that as a spec or as a prototype to build his dashboard. You know, obviously it got a little bit more detailed when we started with the actual data, because I think Avi mentions this. You know, working with real data versus dummy data is a big change, or an eye opener, should I say, to most business users or stakeholders. But yeah, so we did have one enthusiast, and he kind of understands the capabilities of Power BI, maybe not on the DAX side and things like that, but he knows,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah,
I can bring the data in, I can, you know, put a visual together. So he had an idea of what he wanted
yeah.
specifically.
That's
But
that's
yeah, they found few.
That's amazing, and I think I've seen that. It's I'm really glad to hear that you got a super fan, and plus I think you mentioned he's part of the executive team. That's even better, because I think if you can find some support like that, it goes a long way. And frankly, BI, I don't know. It's just me and well, I don't know. The years that I saw BI, it always came down as this top down thing, right? Where somebody invested millions or sometimes hundreds of millions of dollars in a BI solution, or sometimes like a bigger solution, right? I mean, like an ERP solution, and BI was just a part of it or something. So they would be spending millions or hundreds of millions of dollars, and then the commandment kind of came down from the top, right? Thou shall use this tool for BI, and I never saw it working. So again, obviously it's my personal experience, so it's anecdotal, but I never saw it working. So I'm a huge fan of kind of this bottom up, right, where people kind of rise up, and they start talking, and like the super fan you're talking about, they would tell others that, oh, you got to do this. See, this is how we're doing, and they will present their own Power BI dashboards, and every time somebody asks, they were like, yeah, you got to go talk to Rakesh, and they're awesome, and this is so yeah, that's great, that's great. Terrific. Let's go on to the next topic. This one is a thorny one, and you already talked about this somewhat. So what about the infrastructure? And I love, of course, we were talking about the MVP concept, the minimum viable product, and I love just starting off kind of right away. So often I go to companies and they would start talking to me about licensing, and I'll say, you know what, licensing, you can figure that out later. Let's just get the free Power BI desktop and let me add your data files, and let me build something for you. Let's see if the tool works. The other thing that people get stuck on is all this access, like, oh, our data is in this tool and Power BI doesn't have a connector. We're gonna hire somebody to build a custom connector. And I'm like, BS, because every single tool that's out there, well, most of them have an export to CSV or export to Excel. So I would just have them do that and then build a model off of that, and then I can later switch over the connection to the source. And so a lot of things like that, I like going kind of really, really fast. But of course, starting out, when you're validating the concept, when you're trying to sell the idea of Power BI, that's great. I want to move fast. But once you get going, infrastructure can become a challenge. I mean, I can build something connected off of the Excel file sitting on somebody's desktop as an MVP, but then how do you refresh it? Uh, so how have things? So I know you talked about that a little bit earlier with the BI team. How has that played out? Tell me a bit more about that.
So, Avi, what some of the processes I've put in place is, if we're getting raw files in Excel format, and obviously you can't set auto refreshes on those,
Yeah,
so we get it loaded into the database. We ideally try and get those put into an FTP folder, and they come through at a certain time on a daily basis. So we put that into a database. We load it as a table and then we use a connector from Power BI into the SQL database,
yeah,
and that enables us. So we haven't had many different type of connectors from like maybe the
Mm-hmm.
web, or and I haven't been exposed to many other connectors aside from Excel, I think SharePoint and SQL Server. We are looking into one of the softwares that we're running internally in our QA department to plug directly into their software and pull the data out of there. But we saw it was in a very summarized format that wasn't going to add value to the business. So we're turning that into an API
Mm-hmm.
where the data will
Yeah.
be extracted into an API, and then we'll build it off the API, still off SQL.
So the SQL, is that like a SQL server in the cloud, or are you using Gateway to
On
refresh, or
premise.
something else? So are you using a Power
Yeah,
BI
we
Gateway to refresh, or how is it working?
yes.
Okay.
We currently using an on-premise gateway to
Mm-hmm.
refresh our data sets.
And how was your experience in setting that up? Fairly straightforward,
Uh,
or were there some gotchas there?
That functionality currently resides with our DBA,
Yeah.
our database administrator. So he manages the gateways for us.
Yeah.
So I haven't had any issues with the gateways,
Yeah.
unless if they have planned maintenance, then the
Yeah.
gateways go
But
off
was it
and we
was it
just.
like a big deal to set it up? Like, I don't know, like sometimes you go to IT or BI and say, "Oh yeah, this is gonna take 3 months," and you're like, "Oh boy, that sucks." So was it like a big thing with them? Like, "Oh yeah, oh, we had to set up a gateway. Oh, it's gonna take some time and come back in whatever." Or was it, "Oh cool, you need a gateway. Cool, we'll set it up." How I just
Yeah,
wondering,
the
how was your
latter, it
experience?
was, cool. We need a gateway and it was set up. There were no issues.
Great, great.
Interestingly enough, our DBA is also a certified Microsoft trainer. Um, so he had no issue setting it up. It wasn't like, oh no, you've
Terrific.
given me a challenger. It was quite quick.
Terrific. So unless your BI team wants to drag their feet, it should be pretty straightforward. So another question and conversation came up is that cloud is obviously such a buzzword now, and gosh, don't even get me started on data lakes. you know, People who talk about data lakes, they're like, oh yeah, just throw everything in the data lake and all your problems are
Mm.
solved. so uh, but what do you see? Do you see something in front of you in the path going forward, uh, infrastructure wise? Is there like a wish list or a top wish that you have on that side?
On the BI side, not currently, but I know on the data science side, there's limitations with having an on-premise database, so with limitations in refreshing because we're looking at millions of rows of data.
Yeah.
So they're looking at moving either Azure or a data lake on the cloud, but I'm not too clued up
Yeah.
as to what infrastructure they're heading towards. But I know there's been talk of it. They are looking to go onto the cloud here.
Great, great. And folks, yeah. By the way, Rakesh, that makes two of us, man. Yeah, yeah. It's folks. I'm just gonna pause here for a quick second, and so this is probably the topmost question that I get from folks joining or learn Power BI program, even the folks joining our high level program like the Power BI consultant program, is that I'll be like, what do I what's give me the list of things that I need to learn, and it is something like, oh, do I need to learn R? Do I need to learn SQL? And they have this long list, and everybody has a slightly different list, and I just shake my head, and you don't need all that. And I have this concept of what I call a Thor hammer. And I think, and again, I really think that the most powerful position is that where you straddle the business and tech world. So, yeah, I mean, I don't think if you're just like a techie geek, uh, yeah, that's your impact isn't going to be as great, right? So, and generally, your revenue income follows the impact you're creating, right? So business and tech is the place to be. And as far as tech goes, you don't need that much. So this concept of Thor hammer is that you make one technology your Thor hammer. I mean, that's where you're going to be strongest. And I don't think it matters that much as to specifically which technology. That Now, obviously, I'm gonna personally advocate for Power BI, but you could dive deeper into, I don't know, AI or a machine language, R or Python. I don't know, right? I mean, I don't know any of this stuff. But you could pick that, and if you get really, really good, you can often solve a lot of business problems with your Thor hammer. So you lead with that. That becomes your main tool. So for me, the go-to tool is Power BI. But then you can always reach out for other stuff by learning yourself, you know. Or, of course, as we do in our Power BI consultant program, we have different members with different strengths. Like Greg Berg, he dove into creating custom connectors, and he was sharing posts about all of his journey on how he kind of got that and started on that. So of course now, if somebody runs into a client who needs a custom connector, we can just call Greg. So yeah, so you can work that way. Cool. So let's talk about the last topic, and then we can go to Q&A. I don't know what to think about this one. So, return on investment. And I remember reading an article which said that I don't remember the specific number, but the a very small percentage of BI projects can claim to have a positive return on investment. Now I kind of read that, but I also feel like it's kind of unfair. Like I know the companies that I have helped and I've worked with, I intuitively know the impact that it has created, and I've seen it in people's faces and their reaction when I showed them something. And there was this time it's where yeah we built a report in 3 days that the company was trying to build for 1 year, and all of this stuff. But it is hard sometimes to put a dollar figure. What's your take on that? I mean, Rakesh, did you ever get questioned on is like is this investment worth it? Um, and if you were, do you think it's possible to put like a dollar number on the investment in BI, like a return on investment?
Um, so thankfully, I haven't been questioned as to the value that the dashboards bring, because we've it's been chalk and cheese since we've switched over from tedious Excel files and automating a lot of the reporting. I mean, some business units rely completely on the dashboard. Without the dashboard, they are operating
Wow.
blind. I mean, totally blind. And we're looking at, it can be millions of rands that they don't have visibility of what's happening in their division. So the dashboards that I've released in the different business units have definitely been valuable.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't went into the detail of saying if this dashboard is taken away, what would it cost the business? But
Yeah.
I know undoubtedly, because if the dashboard is down, or if it missed, I mean, we're using a pro license, so we get 8 refreshes a day. So if it misses one refresh due to resources being tied up on SQL or the database, you're getting a call like the dashboard
Wow.
didn't refresh,
Yeah.
because you walk into the office in the morning,
Yeah.
and it's quite amazing to see that 2 or 3 computers around you, and people have different dashboards open up, and they
Yeah.
scrutinizing their
Oh
information.
yeah.
So definitely
Oh,
adding value,
love
but I don't
that.
have a number to put or
Yeah.
attach to it.
But tell
Mm.
me, tell me about that, man. I mean, so it sounded like sometimes you walk around the office and you see people have Power BI dashboards open, maybe even the ones that you built. How does that feel?
Well, I think 90% of them is what I've built. So it's actually quite, you get a sense of like pride, like, and I think in the business that I operate in as well, people know that, I wouldn't release a dashboard until I'm completely happy with it,
Oh,
and
really?
I can answer about the data. So they know when they're getting a product at the end of it, when I hand it over, it's a quality product that they can trust and use.
Yeah.
And then they rely on it. It becomes part of the everyday work to look at this and report. And it's we've got it's just been amazing. So whether it's in the customer care, whether it's an executive, whether it's in a department, you're walking around, you're seeing people or there's a meeting happening and your dashboard is open, you can see there's, through the boardroom, your dashboard's opening and they're talking about it, which is quite amazing.
Oh man, that is awesome. So yeah, I haven't walked in like like a corporate office in a while, but I guess I can Yeah, I remember that. But yeah, thanks for reminding me about that feeling. Yeah, I think the return on investment on hard dollars, I think that's unfair. I think it's one of those arguments which seems logical, right? Which seems like, oh yeah, that should be the right question to ask. But I can't quite put my finger on it, but I'm pretty sure that it's not, right? I mean, so of course one of my favorite quotes: the quality of your life is determined by the quality of your questions, and I think it's one of those things where this one is like, yeah, it's kind of a tricky one where it seems such a logical and right thing to ask, but I think yeah that it's not it's not yeah, it can be kind of misleading. Yeah, my typical approach, if people like really push me and they start talking about costs and stuff, is that I generally don't like talking about Power BI. I just like showing it to them, and especially showing what it can do for them. And all the time we would do training at a company. We would go in and we would use their data set to run the training. And man, that was so hard in a way because it made everything challenging. You couldn't walk into class prepared with all those neat examples. So we would kind of work with their data, and a lot of the class happened on the fly. And yes, I crashed and burned plenty of times that I would get stuck and not be able to show anything or something like that. But sometimes things became just magical because the students would lead. And so what I say is that the prettiest of dashboard pales in comparison to one number that you can show them if the dashboard has some kind of dummy data, right? I'm like, oh yeah, look at this fictitious company, AdventureWorks and Toast, and look how pretty their dashboard is. Versus if you're showing them one number, but it's their data. So that's what we would do. I would write a measure, and I would say, oh, this is the number of patients discharged in a day, and now you can slice and dice it. And then the class would like lead me on, like, oh, what if you slice and dice about this? Oh, cool. What about return visitors and all that stuff? And then we'd take off. So that was the good stuff. Yeah, so I think there's a lot there than just looking at return on investment. I wouldn't take that on. Awesome. So Robert, let's check in with a friend Robert here. Let's check in on the chat. One of the okay, Robert did have one question queued up. Let's start with that one. I'm not sure who asked this. What is a secure data, I think, repository where one can host the data? Okay. I'm not sure we have the full context for this question, so I'll read it out again. What is a secure data repository where one can host the data? That's a good question. So Rakesh, I'm thinking it could be a few options. Could be SQL, that you guys are using that quite heavily, and that's working well for you. And you guys are using SQL with the Power BI Gateway, which is a fine way. Of course, if you put SQL Server in the cloud, SQL Azure, then you can skip the gateway. I often put a lot of my stuff in OneDrive. Do you guys do that? Do you have, I don't know, files that are connected to OneDrive, or yeah, is there some stuff outside of SQL? Does that end up being on OneDrive or SharePoint Drive?
I've built dashboards from SharePoint, um, but predominantly we're using SQL.
Yeah.
SharePoint was for a private client,
Yeah.
not for the business. The business we prefer it on just because
Yeah.
of the speed and stuff like that. We do have files sitting on SharePoint, but we haven't built a dashboard connected from SharePoint internally in the business.
Yeah.
But yeah, for a client, I've done that for a client where we've put it onto SharePoint. We've got his Excel files loaded into SharePoint, and we connect it to SharePoint because then you can set your refreshers as well through SharePoint.
Yeah. Yeah. So personally, yeah, I love putting stuff in OneDrive. I mean, yeah, I would throw in an Excel file there and connect Power BI to it. I've also enjoyed connecting Power BI to Google Sheets. Yeah, yeah, I like I like using Google Sheets. Kind of simple, works great on mobile. And yeah, so it's quite flexible. So any of these cloud places, I've not heard of Dropbox. I don't know if that's possible, but OneDrive for sure, that's a great option. SQL, Azure, those are good ones too. Mm, oh, so that question was from Z Chase. So Chase, thanks for your question. If you had like a follow up, let us know. Hold on, guys. I'm gonna try to bring up the chat. Oh, there it is. Mm, yay. All right, we have one more from Matthias. In which language do you code API for Power BI? Yeah, I'm not sure I'm qualified to answer that. Rakesh, which language do you code API? Uh, as far as I can say that, actually, you know what? I'm not gonna try to answer that question. Hopefully, yeah, folks on YouTube, you can help us out. Which language do you code the API for Power BI? Mm, I'm not really sure. The best guess that I would say is that PowerShell, maybe. Rakesh, were you gonna help me out? throw me
I
a line.
think our application developers are using C sharp.
All right.
They're using C sharp. Not that I know anything about C sharp, but I know they use C sharp to build the APIs.
Okay, Matai is saying that wasn't a serious question. Take the next one. Thank you. Okay. Uh, how do you build up a team of of change? How do you build up? Oh, okay. So that is Matthias' question. How do you build up a team of Power BI users inside an organization? Well, that's a good one. So Rakesh, you said you're a two-person team right now, right?
Correct.
Tell me the story of the second person. How did that happen? Yeah, tell me about the process of starting off that team. Yeah.
Yes, so he's actually also a data analyst like me. He came in with I think very little Power BI experience or little to no Power BI experience, but in the last 2 years he's grown immensely, but he prefers the ETL side of things and the the SQL
Mm-hmm.
and get data ready. Um,
Yeah.
but I think it's just diving in, getting your hands dirty, and um, working with the stakeholders or the business owners to understand exactly what they need and giving them what they want or more. That's
Yeah.
purely what we went in and did, and the adoption of the reports or the dashboards
Yeah.
just started to grow, and we now had to create a ticketing system. So if you want a dashboard, it gets to get logged into a ticketing system, and um, yeah.
Yeah.
So we then schedule your work, and we now moving to a point where we're going to align it with sprints. It's going to be put
Yeah.
into a sprint,
Yeah.
and we will then look at it. Do you even
That's
need a
great.
dashboard? Maybe you just need an SSRS report, and you know you got to understand what the user's trying to gain at the end of the day, and guide them that way. Because lots of people, they could an SSRS report would suffice. But sure, it's just been to go back to Matthias's question is. How do you build up a team? It's I think you touch a lot on this. It's passion as well. People who are passionate about
Yeah.
improving or using data to improve. Because I just very similar to you. I've always been in operations for like 20 years, and I'd always find like, if you had a team of 200 people, you can never manage 200 people. It's,
Yeah.
for me, I would always look at the data and, okay, this is what I need to focus on, because otherwise you're just running around like a headless chicken. But it was
Yeah.
a lot around passion, having that passion and
Yeah.
getting people who really enjoy the tool or using,
Yeah.
because there's lots of tools out there, but, just being passionate about it.
Yeah. So, so certainly I'm seeing it in your story, and actually I've seen it over and over again. what I would argue is that hands down, finding passionate people, as Rakesh is talking about, within your organization is the best way to build the team rather than trying to hire from outside. But what you got to be careful of is that try to put your biases and prejudices aside, because what you're going to find is that these people can come from very different kind of teams and backgrounds and so forth. I've heard stories of people who worked in the warehouse, who kind of stepped into these roles, call center folks, admin assistants, and there are these incredible stories. So don't just kind of widen your search. In fact, what I would say is that you can cast a really wide net. So of course, what I did in Microsoft was, when I was now I wasn't looking to build a team, but I would just do these kind of lunch and learn sessions where I would say, hey, and I was just excited about Power BI. I was like, man, this is the best thing since sliced bread. I just want to, show it off to some other people because it's going to help them. So I would host these sessions, and of course everybody was invited. One of those things, right? Which is, yep, anybody can join, and then they will step up themselves. So just give them an opportunity wherever they are, whichever team, and let them step up, let them engage, and then form like a small community around it. Set up like a monthly meeting or a weekly meeting or something like that, or twice a month, whatever works best. And of course, online chat room, Teams, Slack, whatever you use as well, for that community to hang out, and you would see these people kind of rise up, and that could be the start of that team. And of course, Rakesh, he's on his way. By the way, Rakesh, I did notice that it seems like you guys kind of complement each other. Like you said, the other person kind of loves the ETL part, and you can handle the other stuff. All right. Sharan Nandkumar has a question. How do I convince my company to switch from Tableau to Power BI? So Rakesh, what was the scenario in your company? Were there other BI tools around? Was some discussion about that? Oh, should we use this? Should we use that? Or not?
No. Power BI was non-existent until I mentioned it, and it just so happened, I was just doing my normal day-to-day reports, weekly reports, getting them out in Excel, and I think one of the other operations managers mentioned, hey, I've heard about this tool, Power BI. Maybe you should check it out. You might like it, And I just took that idea and I ran with it. I've purchased courses on Tableau, but once I started using Power BI, I didn't want to venture. I've got those courses, they're unopened on Tableau, because it's just, the more I learn in Power BI, I realize there's more that I need to learn and more that I need to learn.
Yeah.
And so I never tried Tableau, but I'm not sure at the moment, but with Power BI, you can download the desktop free, and that's what I was doing at first. I was download the desktop, and it was only when I automated my very first report, we looked at getting me a Power BI Pro license, which was the $10 price tag on it, which wasn't going to break the bank for the company. So it was a no-brainer. Okay, let's give this guy Power BI Pro, and we automated our very first report. But no, I haven't. And I think just to elaborate on something you said earlier, sometimes you can't convince them. You got to show them. Take the tool, go and build something, and show them.
Yeah, that's true. Depends who Sharon is up against. If there's like somebody on the executive team who's somehow a diehard fan of Tableau, maybe they, right? Sometimes you get like a new CEO or COO or CFO, and they're like, "Oh yeah, we used Tableau in the last company. It was awesome. Everybody loved it," and that can be tricky at times. So yeah, I think Rakesh and I are on kind of the same page. I would say, you know what? Maybe that's not the right approach. Maybe the way to think is not that, oh, I'm going to convince them from switch to Tableau to Power BI. Maybe it is to just evaluate both tools and go with an open mind, right? So look at the pricing for sure. I know Power BI can be pricing can be um, really good, especially because they give it away in a lot of cases if you buy like an E5 license. Yeah, look at pricing, look at kind of functionality, maybe run 2 test projects, have somebody build it in Power BI, have somebody build it in Tableau, compare notes, um, and yeah, go with that. Um, the only thing I'll add, kind of a side note, is that I am so thankful for Tableau because Microsoft is their own worst enemy when they have no competition. They just seem to implode and self-combust and kind of look what happened to Internet Explorer, when there was no competition. So yeah, Tableau is definitely a good thing for Power BI. It's gonna keep everybody innovating. Cool. I didn't see any new questions. So Robert, maybe unmute yourself. Uh, I would love to hear what your thoughts were. If something specific kind of caught your attention, I'm putting him on the spot.
Hi guys.
Hey.
Yes, you have put me on the spot. I have enjoyed the whole discussion about building a team. That was quite interesting because in most companies you find that not everybody gets Power BI the way we get it.
Mhm.
So I found that to be pretty awesome.
Yeah. What would you say? What according to you is the biggest problem that you have seen at your company in kind of spreading Power BI? And we talked about a few different things. Oops, I'm scrambling to get my notes up. So we talked about the resistance to change. We talked about the one man army that, oh oops, like, I mean, one man can only do so much, or one person. We talked about maybe the lack of data skills in business users. We talked about infrastructure and the return on investment. Did one of those kind of ring a bell? Where you just went, yeah, that was problematic, or that is problematic in my current organization?
Yes, yes.
And
Yes, so
yeah.
the resistance to change has been the biggest problem in my organization. I have guys who are pretty smart, and the biggest challenge is that they just want the data the way they know it in Excel. So I find myself doing some pretty interesting reports, but they just want us to format it in the way it looks in
Yeah.
Excel, and we can just pull a list instead of creating a dashboard. They just want the end product to be a list that they could just pull and do the things they used to do.
Oh
So
gosh,
it's pretty
yeah.
frustrating.
That is. Frankly, you know what they say, right? I mean, if you oh gosh, actually, what is the saying? If you can't if you can't if you can't beat them, join them. Yes. I don't know why I was struggling. If you can't beat them, join them. Now, of course, I'm not saying you go start building Excel reports like you used to, but what I would try to do, and sometimes it would work, sometimes it wouldn't, is that I would give them exactly what they were asking for. So they wanted to give me an Excel report and all that stuff, and I'll give them that. Of course, in the back end, it was being powered by the Power BI data model. So it was still a step up, right? I mean, one-click refresh and all that sort of stuff. So they got exactly looked like what they asked for, and then I would throw in Power BI as like a bonus. And sometimes I would do this reverse psychology thing where I would say, oh, by the way, it also has this visualization thing, and it's stupid, really. Look at this, and I just did it because it's there. I hate it, and you can play with it and see what you want. See what you think about it, right? No, I wouldn't quite go that far, but I would downsell it, right? I would underplay it. I would say, oh yeah, by the way, here's this visualization thing. It kind of comes with it, and you can take a look. Here's your Excel report, and here's this other thing. And yeah, so if I went it that way, sometimes they would be more receptive. But boy, so I think resistance to change. So as we step into our Power BI consultant program and the Power BI Pioneer program, I think that's going to be an interesting topic, and certainly, yeah, who knows? Maybe we'll come back and explore this and bring some other folks and dive deeper into it. Cool. We're right at the hour, so And of course, right now it's 11:30 in the night for me. I know it's a little late for Rakesh as well, who's based out of South Africa, and Robert in Kenya. And so I want to thank both Rakesh and Robert. Thank you, folks. And I want to thank everybody who joined us online. We will be back again next Friday. I will still be in India. But yeah, we'll be back again with another topic. So, yep, I will see you next time. Until then.